It's no secret on the channel that Saw 3D The Final Chapter is without a doubt my least favorite in the entire series. Ranging from multiple issues to inconsistent tone, to lackluster traps, to the gore and the visual look of the movie looking incredibly cheap, almost made for TV. But in the end, in 2010, this movie out of the Saw series actually had the highest budget. I think a lot of that though went into making this movie look 3D, even having an even longer pre-production process, making the production itself a whole lot shorter than the previous 6 films beforehand. But as we're coming to the end of our How to Beat series, of course I've got to talk about Saw 3D in the process as well, before we jump into Jigsaw next week before we finish it off. G'day everyone, how are we all doing? Welcome back to the channel once again. Today we're talking about Saw 3D and how to beat every trap in the movie. Or more or less possibilities to heighten your chances of survival. Now Saw 3D, as I said, is my least favorite movie in the entire series, for multiple reasons, including some I just listed, but there are a lot of issues with this movie that I just don't understand the reasoning behind why they were made, and also for this series to end at this point was really disappointing. Even though Jigsaw wasn't as good, you know, at least the series is still going and got rebooted in a way, and I'm really happy about that because this is, as I said multiple times, my favorite horror series of all time, and I want to thank you all really quickly so much for the support and the love on this series I've done. I know it took me a couple months to get back to the series when it came to jumping back into Saw 4 after dropping off a couple months ago with Saw 3, but I've been really enjoying making these videos again. But you know, today we're here to talk about Saw 3D and the traps. I do want to make mention really quickly that there are a few traps in this movie that I will not be mentioning, ranging from the pain train to the suspended cage to the wisdom teeth combination, the sentry gun and the cyanide box, and the reverse bear trap. The reason I'm not talking about these particular ones, one, the pain train is a dream sequence. That doesn't fucking count. That isn't even really a trap. It's just something in Jill's mind when she's asleep. When it comes to the suspended cage, you know, Bobby beats it anyway, and there really is only one way to beat it, and there's really no point in talking about it. Sure, you could just drop down in between the spikes, but swinging outs, you know, we all know how to fucking beat this one. I don't really think it's a trap, it's just the beginning of his game. The wisdom teeth combination was so straightforward, it's not even funny, and there'd be no point even fucking mentioning it. The sentry gun and cyanide box was essentially executions. Are there ways to beat them? Sure, but this isn't really even tests. These are executions to end the lives of innocent police officers, I should say. You know, Gibson kind of had it coming, if you ask me, and with that one they could have just hid behind a fucking desk. And when it comes to the reverse bear trap with Jill, well, there is no way for her to beat that because Hoffman's right there. He's watching her. Even if she tried to escape, he'd put a stop to that fucking immediately. There's absolutely no point in mentioning this one. But without further ado, let's jump into our first trap. Starting off, we have the public execution trap, where the victims of this trap were Brad, Ryan, and Dina. It was located inside the Wellhammer store, a home improvement market located in a public square. It consisted of a mechanical contraption positioned in the center of the room. Attached to both sides of it were circular saw blades. In the middle of the contraption was a movable device with another blade. Brad and Ryan were chained to either side of the contraption, while Dina was chained to a large metal plate suspended from the ceiling above the third blade. If Brad or Ryan wanted Dina to survive, they had to kill each other, or if they both were to survive, they'd have to decide to do nothing and end Dina's life in the process due to a very toxic love triangle they are stuck in. This one I took a look at and I actually found it kind of easy to figure out because 3 people can technically survive this trap. If you look very carefully underneath the table, Brad and Ryan at their disposal do have wires underneath that they could possibly kick and rip out. They are very easily accessible, they're exposed, and they could easily access them by wrapping their legs around it and ripping out the cables, or even then when it comes to their hands that are shackled to the saw blades in front of them, there are wires still connected to the saw blades that are very accessible that they could possibly rip out. This is not guaranteed by any means, but there is a possibility where they could rip them out and disable their saw blades in the process due to the exposed wires. If this were possible, or even then if it wasn't, they aren't strapped down by their feet at all, so therefore they could move all the way back to the point where it would register that one of them, Brad or Ryan, died, therefore moving the saw blade out of the way of Dina, therefore saving her in the process as well. It's just a matter of moving it to that point. Their legs aren't shackled or held down by anything. The only thing holding them down are their wrists, which are connected to the saw blade and the device itself on the moving plate, not the table itself either. Next up, we have the Lawnmower Trap. The victims of this trap were Sydney and Alex. They were suspended several feet above the floor of a room and had to cling onto two identical levers hanging from the ceiling across from each other. Below Alex and Sydney on the floor were several upturned lawnmowers. In order for one of them to survive, the other had to let go of the lever and thereby falling into the rotating blades. We're at a major disadvantage with this one when it comes to figuring out how to survive it, as the scene is incredibly short, but when it comes to this trap, the only thing that I can really think of is they could either use the levers that they're hanging on and swing to the shelves beside them and catch them where the gnomes are that we see get splattered with blood later on. Very fake. Pink looking blood. Or even then swing themselves so that they can, jump and let go and land in a place where the lawnmowers are not, and therefore surviving and more or less avoiding the blades below them. Next up, we have the horsepower trap. The victims of this trap were Evan, Cara, Dan, and Jake. In the center of the room was a car which was held up by several jacks. The doors as well as the hood had been removed and the steering wheel was secured and held in position by chains. Evan sat on the driver's seat with his naked back glued to the seat. Once the game began, Evan had 30 seconds to tear himself away from the seat and pull the red lever attached to the motor, otherwise a Rube Goldberg type contraption would set off a chain reaction of death and destruction. Now when it came to the horsepower trap, due to the way that it's filmed, my camera doesn't want to focus. Hello? Now, when it comes to this trap, initially I had a bit of a struggle figuring out how they could possibly beat this or how Evan could beat this because their lives are in his hands. These are people that we don't want to really survive. They're racist, they're neo-Nazis in a way. And in regards to that, I did figure out though 2 ways that they could possibly survive. When it comes to pulling the lever, which is the only way to stop the contraption, Evan has a major advantage due to his legs being longer than his arms and them not being chained down by anything. He could possibly reach his legs over the dashboard and pull the lever using his foot and hooking the lever that way. Or even then, the other solution I have is the chains that are connected to the wheel holding it in place. They are only screwed on by a, one singular screw and bolt. They are very easily accessible and could possibly be unscrewed. If he does this, he can unwrap the chains and use that to hook the lever and pull it back, with this granting the survival of everyone involved. Next up, we have the silent circle. The victim of this trap was Nina. It was the second part of Bobby Dagen's trial at the Clear Dawn Psychiatric Hospital. Nina sat on the chair in the middle of a metal contraption. To prevent her from moving away, she wore a straitjacket as well as a contraption which held her head in place. The machine surrounding Nina consisted of metal rings held up by 4 metal posts at approximately the same height as Nina's head. If a noise is made, the metal beams, of which are at 4 different angles around her neck, would move forward and slowly pierce her throat. Now with this one, I've seen a few theories in regards to people saying that you could possibly use something around the room to jam the gears, or you could possibly use something to sort of, block the device, block the spikes from coming in and piercing her neck and possibly choking her but not killing her. But I have an easier solution. If you look very carefully at this shot, you can see some very easily accessible wires that are completely exposed, and the same goes to the sensor on the wall. These could quite possibly be ripped out due to them being so easily exposed, or yet again, another option that you have is find something around the room once again, like what other people have said in regards to blocking the device. Or you could do this in the way of possibly using something to cut the wires and disabling it altogether. With this, the wires are cut, the wires are no longer able to be connected through their electrical circuit, therefore not only can the spikes not move, but the sensor is also disabled at the exact same time. Next up, we have the Impalement Wheel. The victim of this trap was Suzanne. Suzanne was trapped to a plate which was in the center of a large metal wheel by several leather restraints in a horizontal position. To prevent her from moving her head away, it was held in place by a metal ring screwed onto the plate. Before the wheel was a contraption with 3 pointy metal rods. Bobby had to step into another machine across from the wheel and had to lift 2 metal bars to which a heavy weight was attached to the highest point in order to close the circuit. However, in doing so, 4 metal spikes pierced either side of his body. In order for him to save Suzanne, the weight had to be held up for the duration of at least 30 seconds. Now this one, a lot of people have come up with major solutions in regards to fixing the circuit and everything and connecting it, or going around grabbing things to break the bars, of which would pierce her eyes and her mouth. But I have two easier solutions that were incredibly easy for me to come by. Usually with these traps, I have to watch them multiple times and frame by frame, but I noticed these, solutions immediately. When it comes to the and this all relies on the contraption that Suzanne is in. Bobby doesn't have to really do anything with his. But when it comes to Suzanne's contraption, I noticed some exposed wires once again that are very accessible and could possibly be removed. But even then, there is an easier one, of which is rotating the table of which Suzanne is strapped to. If you look very closely, or yet again, it's kind of just in your fucking face, what is actually maneuvering the gears and also the contraption itself is something that is basically just a bike chain that is also very easily accessible. If you can go up to the chain and remove it just like you can with a bicycle chain with its gears and also its rotors, the contraption would be completely disabled altogether, and therefore the gears wouldn't be able to rotate, therefore not moving the contraption that, Suzanne is strapped to, and therefore it wouldn't even pierce her eyes and her mouth and she wouldn't get any closer. Remove the bike chain and the device is just disabled immediately. It's kind of baffling to me that there are so many exposed wires and chains and gears when it comes to the contraptions in Saw 3D. These weren't really thought out that well. These were kind of lazy. Next up, we had the Hangman's Noose. The victim of this trap was Cale. Cale was trapped on one end of a long hallway several feet above the ground floor. Most of the floor of the hallway was missing. Cale had a mask locked onto his head, which made it impossible for him to see anything. Additionally, he had a noose around his neck, which was secured by a lock and was connected to a winch at the ceiling. To survive, he had to rely on the help of Bobby Dagan to get a key and unlock the device before time runs out and he is in the process hung. Now, with this one, there was only really one solution that I could come up with that could possibly save, Cale, because I've seen a lot of people suggest that when it comes to this contraption, all he needs to do is crawl to be a little bit more sturdy when crawling across the planks, and therefore move the planks over to Bobby to give him access to walk over and give him the key or to unlock the contraption. But there is one big problem with this solution. He is blindfolded, and him trying to move something like that over to another platform is very, very unwise in my opinion, because the plank would just drop anyway and he's kind of trapped in place afterwards. With him being blind, there is a major disadvantage to this solution because he can't move it over with being able to see anything, so therefore he wouldn't know if it's sliding over properly, if it's going to get stuck on the other beam that's going across that Bobby is standing on, etc. So the only thing I actually came up with that could possibly help them in this situation does come down to the fact of them running out of time and, Cale being hung. But it's a very similar solution to what I came up with when it came to the gallows in Saw 6. When it came to the barbed wire and my solution, if the guy ended up wrapping his hands through the noose itself, he could prevent it from choking him. Sure, he'll still be strangled and be suffocated a little bit, but it won't just cut off all circulation and won't cut off his airflow entirely. In doing this, if Cale did the same thing, especially with it not being barbed wire, he has an advantage compared to the guy in the gallows in Saw 6. If he does this, it's just a leather padded strap. He does this, he buys time for Bobby to then make his way over and unlock the contraption. Sure, he'll be dropped down in the process and possibly suffer breaking a leg by dropping all the way down or more broken bones, but it does grant him the chance of survival higher than anything else that we could possibly come up with in this game. Finally, we come up to the most notorious trap in Saw 3D. My personal favorite, the Brazen fucking Bull. The victim of this trap was the incredibly innocent Joyce Dagan. Joyce found herself on a small metal platform and had a leather collar around her neck with a chain attached to it. This chain ran through a small hole in the platform and was attached to a winch below, which prevented Joyce from moving away. To survive, she had to rely on the help of her husband Bobby. Across from the trap was a pulley with two chains, each one having a hook attached to it. Bobby had to pierce his pectoral muscles with these hooks and then had to hoist himself up to the ceiling, where he had to connect two extension cords in order to deactivate Joyce's trap. And we all know what happens if he didn't do this. She would be burnt alive and everything, and the most brutal trap in the entire series, mainly for the reason that she was completely fucking innocent and didn't do anything wrong. Thank you, Saw 3D. Now, when it comes to the Brazen Bull, there is really only two solutions that you can come up with, and these are ones that people have talked about forever. One of them is that if he does decide to pierce his pectorals, if he took that extra time to pull himself a little bit further, not only would the wires be less effort to put together, but also he'd be closer as well, putting less strain on his pectorals, making it easier for him to connect the circuit. All he needed to do was pull himself up that little bit further, putting less strain on the pectorals and making it easier for him to connect the circuit. Or, when it came to him actually hoisting himself up, he didn't even need to pierce his pectorals. He could have done one or two things. Considering the idea that Bobby is wearing shoes, even if he's standing on the hooks, it wouldn't be enough force for him to pierce his foot as well. With this, there would be pain endured because he's got hooks going through his fucking feet, but it wouldn't be enough to pierce his foot entirely, or it would pierce his skin, but not enough. He would be able to use that as a little sort of platform to pull himself up, therefore not having to pierce his pectorals. This would, you know, heighten his chances of getting to it earlier, saving time, but also less pain being endured. Or he could slip his feet into the curves of the hook, therefore, you know, pulling himself up like that once again. It's the same way, just he's either standing on the hooks himself with his shoe on, or he's slipping his feet into the curves. Therefore, he's giving himself a heightened chance with less risk of injury, less pain, and also more time on his side, because he's getting to it sooner and he's closer to it. But in reality, this trap fucking sucks and I hate everything about it. But guys, those are my solutions for how to beat the traps in Saw 3D. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you've got any ideas on how to beat the traps in this movie, please comment down below. Let me know what your solutions are, any other ideas possibly to beat the traps in Saw 3D, because these ones, in my opinion, were incredibly simple, aside from one or two within here. And I know there are some that I didn't mention. I'm sorry, I'm fucking cheating, but they were kind of pointless to fucking mention. And I'm not gonna fucking do stuff that is pointless to mention because they're not really traps. But either way, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I do appreciate all your love and support as per usual, especially with this series. It's been an absolute blast. We've only got one more to do now, and that is Jigsaw, which will be out next week. But guys, seriously, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, do be sure to give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment down below what you thought, as well as your solutions on how to beat Saw 3D's traps as well. Do be sure to click the subscribe button and the bell to get notified when new videos are up every single week, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.